Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1986 sports drama, The Color of Money. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Brock for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Color of Money is actually a sequel. It's a sequel to the 1961 film The Hustler, which also features Paul Newman as the character Fast Eddie. Now, I did watch that prior to watching this movie, and I really wasn't a big fan of it. I thought Paul Newman, Jackie Gleason, and Piper Laurie delivered some good performances. I liked some aspects of the script, in particular, a lot of the grittier aspects of the film, which is very ahead of its time for the 60s. But for a film called The Hustler, there's barely any hustling in it, except for like one scene early on in the movie. And there's a large chunk of the film that is just devoted to a romance between Paul Newman and Piper Laurie that does nothing for me because the two shouldn't be together. And I think that's the point, but it doesn't make it any less boring and dull to watch because it's an abusive relationship and it's just one of those things where I just don't have much of a connection to it. And then on top of that, you've got just a really absurdly long running time that's like over 2 hours. I have no idea why that film was 2 hours and 14 something minutes. And so you have that, and then it's just a bummer of a movie. The pool scenes aren't even really that well shot. They are all pretty much shot the same way. I know there were limitations back then in terms of what you could do with the camera, but even then, you could have mixed it up a little bit. And yeah, overall, I just was not that impressed by the film. I know a lot of critics love The Hustler. I know Roger Ebert is an enormous fan of the film. And I know a lot of people think that The Color of Money is a lesser film than The Hustler and think that it's, an okay, nothing special kind of movie. But after watching The Color of Money, I think it's a million times better movie than The Hustler, just based on my personal opinion. I don't understand the hype of The Hustler, but I get why this film was nominated for at least 4 Oscars. I get why Paul Newman won the Oscar for Best Actor when it comes to his performance in this film. And if anything, I think this film deserves more recognition than it gets. It seems to be treated like it's some redheaded stepchild of The Hustler, and I really don't think that's fair, especially when I believe that it's a better movie. Uh, it's definitely a more watchable film. It's definitely a film that I would feel is a much better paced movie, and I think it has a more compelling and enjoyable story as well. Now, The Color of Money is directed by Martin Scorsese, and Scorsese is a absolute master of his craft. He puts on a clinic here. He shows that he can do a typical studio project and get it under budget and get it under time and still create some absolutely amazing shots and not lose anything that makes him such a well-renowned director. In fact, he chose this project specifically to prove that he could do a major studio film and get it under budget and get it done on time. And he not only does that, but he just delivers with some really incredible direction. The way that he shoots the pool sequences is the best I've ever seen any film shoot anything regarding pool. The series of shots that he decides to place within this film are just numerous sequences that are just very ambitious in terms of the camera angles, the techniques. He even speeds up the camera sometimes. He changes the point of view. There's a gorgeous shot that is of a reflection of Paul Newman's character, Fast Eddie, inside of a pool ball, like, right in the reflection of the pool ball as he's about to hit it with a cue, and that shot is just amazing. And that's just one of many shots in this film that are just astounding from a directorial standpoint. This is, in my opinion, one of Scorsese's most underappreciated efforts. I don't understand why people seem to think that this is nothing special in his filmography, because there are some really ambitious, really difficult shots that he pulls off in this film brilliantly. So, yeah, I think he absolutely sank all the balls in the pocket here with his direction, for sure. Now, the film is based on the novel The Color of Money by Walter Tevis, which is a sequel to the Hustler novel. Um, and the script is by Richard Price. And for me personally, this script is as close to just sinking the nine ball as you can possibly get, except for like the last 5 minutes of the movie. But up until that point, I thought that it was just a really well played game of pool in terms of just how it just continually kept knocking each ball into the pocket when it comes to everything that I'm looking for when it comes to a film, let alone a movie that's dealing with the game of pool. Now, I'm not really what you consider a aficionado of pool. But I did have a lot of fun playing pool with my dad when he had a pool table. So I do have a bit of nostalgia for the game of pool, and this film really captures a lot of that for me. It captures the fun of playing pool. It captures the thrill. It captures the excitement of it when you get the right shot and you knock the ball into the pocket, and you call your shots and you actually make it. And I like how this is a sequel to The Hustler, but in a lot of ways it's just trying to be its own film. Like you really could completely change the name of Fast Eddie Felson and change a few things around within the script, and you would still have a really good movie, still have a great film that doesn't even have any connection to The Hustler. It stands on its own. And but even with the connection to The Hustler, it still works because there's a little moments where it kind of has a bit of a hey, remember this type of moment. It definitely has some moments of reminiscing, but it doesn't really linger on them. That's one thing about the script by Price that I really liked about uh this movie is that it is a sequel to The Hustler, but it doesn't linger on things. It doesn't try to do the same thing. It doesn't try to be the same movie. And for the most part, it just has a little moments where it'll have a few callbacks, but that's about it. It just focuses mainly on the story that it's trying to tell. A lot of sequels nowadays, they tend to be too retrospective. They tend to go way too much back in time in terms of trying to capture the same magic of the first film or playing a game of member berries. But Color Money, for the most part, doesn't do that very often. And when it does, it's very subtle. But what isn't subtle about the movie is how well it writes a lot of its characters, how well it writes Eddie Felson. It shows him as a bitter, jaded old man who, because of the character that he learned due to some of the difficult things that he dealt with in The Hustler, he's found a way to make a living, but he still feels like there's something missing. He still misses hustling. He still misses the thrill of winning a game of pool, and he sees a lot of himself in this young, brash kid named Vincent, and he decides to take it upon himself to take him under his wing, teach him the ways of hustling, and get him involved with this tournament in Las Vegas for nine ball. And in the process, while working with this kid and developing and building this kid's confidence and being a mentor to him, he realizes that he still has that desire, that will to go back and win in pool. And he gets the courage that he didn't have before because he was so battered down and just brought to his knees by everything that he dealt with in his life, that he just didn't want anything to deal with pool except for like the bare minimum. Do what he needed to do in order to keep making money, but not necessarily be so deeply involved with the game like he was in the past. And I actually like how in the script the light bulb moment for Eddie is when he just gets hustled. He gets hustled badly by a character played by Forrest Whitaker, and he loses a lot of money, and he has this moment where he breaks down and cries, and because he can't believe that he fell for that. He can't believe that he was the one that got hustled. And that leads to him deciding enough is enough. I'm going to go get my eyes checked. I'm going to get some glasses. I'm going to start training and working on my pool skills, and I'm going to enter the tournament, and I'm going to win the damn thing. And I like that. I like that about the film. I think all the build up uh, leading to the tournament is terrific. Does a great job building the characters, whether it's Eddie or Vincent or Carmen, even the little bits with Janelle, who is the girlfriend of Eddie's. And I like the witty lines of dialogue, the back and forth, the repertoire, just a lot of the stuff that these characters have with one another. And repertoire is not the right word, but I like the repertoire that the writer brings to the table. There's a lot of liveliness to the script, and there's just a lot of moments where it doesn't necessarily shy away from the grittiness either. Like, there's a scene where Vincent gets roughed up pretty badly, and it has one of the most intriguing ends to a tournament that I've seen in a film like this. I honestly did not expect it coming when you find out that in the match between Vincent and Eddie, teacher versus student, uh, Vincent hustled Eddie. He took the fall and he didn't give Eddie his best game. And when Eddie is facing off against the next opponent in the semifinals, he's getting his butt kicked, and he just decides to forfeit because Eddie didn't get Vincent's best game. He only got to the semifinals because Vincent took the fall, and he can't live with himself. He can't if he's gonna get beat. If he's gonna get beat, he's gonna get beat on his own terms. He's not gonna get beat because he was misled into thinking that he was better than he was. Because if you think about it, Eddie had been out of the game for decades, so it was a bit of a lucky series of flukes that he was even able to make it to the round to play um, Vincent in the first place, let alone beat Vincent. And yeah, Eddie's like, I'm not having that. I forfeit. And I know that's a part of the script that some people don't like, but I really like that about it. Like I said, it makes it unique. It makes it different. You don't see that very often in these kind of films. But it's what happens after that just doesn't work for me. It just doesn't quite hit that 9 ball in the pocket. It almost does it throughout the entire movie, but it just falls short here because even the setup here is good. I like this idea of Eddie and Vincent having a game one-on-one in an empty pool room, giving each other their best and seeing who wins. I like that a lot. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the ending of Rocky 3. But in Rocky 3 it felt more earned that you don't actually see the final outcome of that fight. Here it's unsatisfying because they're about to start the game and then the movie just stops. You have Eddie say he's back and then the movie freeze frames and then end credits. And I'm like, is he really back? Because it seems like he only made it to the semifinals because Vincent took the fall for him and did it for Vincent's own financial gain because he wasn't really going to make that much more during the tournament compared to what he was making during the practice sessions and stuff like that, or playing other guys in the pool halls. And it's one of those things where I get where the writer is going here, but it's just not satisfying. It's not a good way to end this after all of this buildup because it just doesn't feel genuine. I really think it would have been a better choice to either have shown Eddie winning that game or you show Eddie being ahead in the game and then you have that scene where he says he's back and then you cut to the credits where you can still make up your mind how it might have ended. It can still be left up to interpretation who won. But the way that it's set up here, it just feels incomplete and it's a bit of a miss. But like I said, everything leading up to that I loved. I even liked the stuff with Vincent working at the toy store. I like the dynamic and the moments between Vincent and Carmen. And I like the stuff with Fast Eddie, who's just this gruff, take no shit and just tell it like it is kind of character. And I like how he's willing to do a lot of different things to try to get the best out of Vincent. And I like that Vincent is cocky and young and brash and immature and the complete opposite of Eddie. Really creates a nice contrast. So yeah, I really like this script. I think it's a I think it's a great script for the most part. Other than the ending. I think it has a great cast too. I mean, Paul Newman as Eddie Felson. I think his performance in The Hustler was good, but I actually thought this was better. Especially the scene where he breaks down after he got hustled. Um, I think he's funny. I think he's very charming. I definitely think he's a much more likable character here, despite some of his rough edges. Because in The Hustler, he was young and brash in a way that was not very likable. Like you didn't really necessarily care as much about him as a character and his issues because of how he carried himself. Uh, and here you felt more sympathy because he's older, he's been forgotten about, and he's not what he once was. And so you do feel a little more sympathy for him, especially when he gets hustled badly. Tom Cruise is Vincent, who has that shirt that just says Vince on it. Because, just in case anyone forgets who he is, which is actually a shirt that everyone wore who was working at the toy store, which I find to be crazy too. Like, what kind of toy store is that where you just wear a t shirt that just says your name on it? It just was pretty bizarre. Like, has anyone ever worked at a Toys R Us or a toy store back in the day, like in the 80s, where you just wore a shirt with your name on it? Maybe that was a thing. I don't know. But Vincent as a character really is someone that fits what Tom Cruise was able to bring to the film. Because Tom Cruise is a great bit of casting for this character, especially at this point in his career, because he was a ball of energy. He was wild, he was dangerous. This was around the same time as Top Gun. He was just a very charismatic and just likable guy, and you really were drawn to him when it comes to watching him on the screen. I mean, he showed that even in one of his earliest starring roles in All the Right Moves. And here it's more of an extension of that, but also turned up a little bit. And I think it's a bit too much at times. I think it's great casting because there are moments where Tom Cruise is just strutting around and showing how good he is with a pool stick, and it's a blast, and you can tell that Tom is just having the time of his life because he did all of the pool shots, all of the pool trick shots, and all of the shots of pool. Tom did himself except for one scene. So he definitely did put a lot of work into being this young pool god. And it was just a really fun thing to watch. You know, the whole bit where he's dancing and just in a groove to Werewolves of London, and his hair was perfect. I love that song anyway, and that was just a really fun line delivery by Tom Cruise. But there are some moments where it's a bit too much Cruise. You know, there was a certain time in Tom Cruise's career, at least early on in his career, where he tended to be a little too energetic. He tended to be a little too uh, uh, over the top, and that led to a lot of kind of uneven performances at some points early in his career, and also it led to a lot of ridicule. And I can see why. You know, when he's doing the scenes where he's with Paul Newman and he's all like, Eddie, come on, come on, Eddie. Eh, eh, I mean, eh, really, Eddie, eh, come on, like, you know, that kind of stuff. That is really not good acting by Tom Cruise. But there aren't so many moments like that in this film to just totally bring down his performance, because other than a few moments like that, I think it's a good performance by Tom Cruise. I think he did a good job. And I definitely felt that he and Paul Newman had some good chemistry. And I also felt, you know, Tom had just really good chemistry with Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio as well. You bought that they were in love with one another despite some of their misgivings or their issues with each other. And it was not necessarily the most even relationship. There were uneven moments, but you still felt that they cared for one another. And I think that roughness, that rawness of that relationship, I thought that was really compelling in its own way. Because a lot of times in these kind of films, you don't really see a lot of these sort of rough relationships that aren't necessarily pitch perfect or something straight out of a rom com. So I like the fact that, you know, things were a little rough around the edges between the two. Helen Shaver, I also really liked as Janelle. I liked the moments between her and Paul Newman. I thought they were rather sweet and charming in their own way. But going back to Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's performance, I know she got nominated for an Oscar for this, and I get it. It's a really striking performance by her. She's sexy and confident. She's ruthless at times and pulls all of that off very well. And I've always been a fan of hers ever since The Abyss or Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And I honestly think she's quite underrated as an actress. Um, this was a good performance, but this was just one of many good performances from her. I think she should have been nominated for The Abyss, considering everything that she put herself through in that film. or even something like Class Action. I thought she was really amazing in that too. So it was great to see Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio here in what a lot of people consider to be her breakout role. And you can definitely see why she was on a lot of people's radar after this movie. John Turturro has a little bit role in this as this cocky scumbag Julian who works at Eddie's pool hall, and he's he's a cocky asshole, and John Turturro does a good job playing that character. Like, you don't like the guy, but you love to hate him, kind of thing, almost to the point where you would have liked to have seen him in the film more. At times, it almost seems like this performance is like a proto Jesus from The Big Lebowski, because it kind of has that same sort of vibe. Bill Cobbs is also in this as one of the pool hall owners named Orvis. Forrest Whitaker, like I mentioned, he plays the guy who hustles Eddie Amos. And you have this guy named Keith McCready as Grady Seasons, who I believe was I don't know if he was an actual pool player. No, I don't know if he was. But yeah, Keith McCready, he was there. Honestly, I think his performance was probably the weakest out of anyone in the cast. But I think he was more there for his pool skills than anything else, and he was a good pool player. Um, but yeah, really, quite a solid and just strong cast. The cinematography by Michael Ballhaus definitely didn't suck balls. I thought it was spectacular. There's some really great looking shots of this, of the pool halls, the pool tables, the pool balls rolling into the holes, the outside shots of the seedy, just cold strips of pool bars, you know, at night. Just a really nice looking film, even from the opening credits. Very unique looking opening credits, and just a film that it's one of those movies where you really do get drawn in when it comes to just how it looks. And in large part, it's due to the cinematography and, of course, the collaboration between the cinematographer and Scorcese. The editing by Thelma Schoonmaker I also thought was stellar. There were a lot of moments in this where the editing could be very choppy, could be very uh, um off, but that doesn't happen here. Everything's is smooth. It's as smooth as Paul Newman is in this movie. And I like the score by Robbie Robertson as well. It has some instrumental moments that tie into some of the other songs that are from the soundtrack, but I think it adds its own smoky, just nice bit of atmosphere to the movie. And speaking of the soundtrack, this soundtrack is great. I mean, you got Don Henley's song "Who Owns This Place." You got tons of Eric Clapton hits here. You know, "It's in the Way That You Use It," which is one of my favorite songs by Eric Clapton. It's in the way that you use it. Dun, dun, dun. It comes and it goes. Dun, dun, dun. It's in the way that you use it. Dun, dun, dun. Boy, don't you know? Dun, dun, dun. You've got "Don't Tell Me Nothing" by Willie Dixon. You've got another song. You got a song by Robert Palmer called "Let Yourself In For It." That's another good one. Um, yeah, "Werewolves of London." You also have some other songs by Eric Clapton that weren't actually included on the official soundtrack, but they are a part of the film. But yeah, great soundtrack. It's fitting for a great movie. The film did well. I mean, it was made for like 14 million. It made like 52 million in the US in October of 1986. And it did get a lot of critical acclaim when it came out. Some critics were kind of lukewarm on it. Of course, Roger Ebert didn't like the film and gave it 2 thumbs down because he's such a fanboy of The Hustler. Gene Siskel also gave it 2 thumbs down. That's one of those instances where I disagree with both of them. I think this deserves 2 thumbs up because this film was great. Um, and even at 120 minutes, like it went by at a really good pace. I was consistently compelled and engaged by the plot or the characters or just watching Scorsese work his magic behind the camera. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say about The Color of Money except I would definitely recommend this one if you haven't seen it yet. And I liked it enough that it's already in my like top 20 of favorite sports movies. And like I said, I'm not somebody who watches a lot of pool or is a enormous fan of the game of pool, but it is something that I do have a certain soft spot for because of the games I played with my dad. So this film kind of taps into that a little bit, and it's just shot in such a brilliant way by Scorsese that it's just really a lot of fun to watch. But anyway, that is my review of The Color of Money. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.